Our Bible story this week is David is chosen as king. Do you remember what a shepherd is? A shepherd is someone who takes care of the sheep. The shepherd knows each lamb that is his. Even if he has 100 different lambs, he knows each one in a special way. He knows if even one lamb is missing. A shepherd will even name each little lamb because a shepherd loves his sheep so much. The sheep also learns to love and obey the shepherd. In Bible days, the shepherds were often young boys. There was a young boy named David who took care of his father's sheep. David was an excellent shepherd. He listened to his father and he learned how to take care of the sheep. Sometimes, if they seemed to be upset, or if one of them had come close to having an accident that day, David would sing to them. And when David sang, the sheep would calm down and rest quietly again. David would sing most often at night under the stars when everything was quiet and peaceful. The sheep had learned the voice of the shepherd. When he was older, David was given a harp, and he learned to play this while he sang. A harp is something like a violin, except you pluck the strings quickly with your fingers instead of using a bow over the strings. The sheep loved to hear David play his harp. David often didn't go home for days, but he lived on the hillside with his sheep. David was also very brave because sometimes he had to protect his sheep from attacks by wild animals. Most of the time, David used his slingshot to scare away wild animals and keep them from his sheep. But many times large wild animals would come to the hillside that were too big for a slingshot to scare away. And one time, a lion tried to attack him, and when he heard the lamb cry out, he ran quickly to go see what was happening. And as soon as he saw the lion, he killed it. David did not worry about being brave. He just did what had to be done. But we know how brave David really was because he killed a lion. Another time when David was watching his sheep, a bear came near. David knew that bears were even meaner than lions and wolves, and this bear was very strong, and he stood up on his hind legs and he attacked David. But somehow David killed the bear. David would not let anything hurt his sheep. When something bad happened to one of his sheep, David would take care of the animal or he'd care for the injury that one of the sheep had suffered. Then he would sit down with his harp and he would sing quietly to the sheep once again. Later, when David was grown, he wrote many of the Psalms in the Bible. This is one of the Psalms that David wrote, Psalms 23. Maybe he thought of that part of it while he was singing to his sheep. God was teaching David to have great courage. How did he teach David to have courage? What other things did David learn to do while he cared for the sheep? He used a slingshot. He sang and played a harp. God would soon use all these abilities that David had learned while he cared for his sheep on the hillside. All these things that you're learning now will be used by God when you're older also too. Do not ever think that what you're learning is not important. Next week, we're going to be learning about a time when David was braver than all the armies of Israel. God was preparing David for a very important job that you will see.